Hey kids, happy Monday, happy week, happy last week of March. Welcome to TGL. I'm Groundhead Jim. We're going to talk about some stuff today. There's a lot of you in chat with all kinds of great energy, and I love that because I am full of energy today. So, Ian Sweeney was here earlier, said, Stanley Tucci? I don't know if that's exactly how it was said, but that's how I read it. I see Sir Clifton in the house. Stu, the Universal Toy Collector, awesome to see you here live, my friend, but always awesome to see you. Congratulations on the stream. We'll talk about that in a bit. I also see Gojatron, and I see Wilhelm Toy and Hobbe. Keith Knight. We all know how it is. Badger's here. We're listening because he gets to work from home. Jason Garcia is here. And Ian Sweeney is here in the presence. There you go. They can verify. Sir Clifton, I don't know if I mentioned you before, but I see you in here. I see Melvor who says, video games are hard. Yes, especially the old ones because their cartridges are... I get what you're saying. I see Fuller's Figures. Connor, welcome to the show, sir. And I think I got everyone for now. I missed you. Sorry. It's not intentional, but I am wearing my glasses unlike certain people. So... did not have a TGL last week. Back was bothering me something fierce, and I've been taking a lot of different steps over the last several weeks to start lowering my weight and strengthening my core, and so that my back doesn't get to the place where it is, you know, sometimes when I'm in pain. And as a result of that, my back was hurting pretty bad last week because I've been trying to do more. And what I will say is that I am noticing my gut start to shrink. There's some telltale signs of gut shrinkage. Okay, pain is less. And as of tomorrow, I will have had a total of 6 beers in 14 days. That is a big thing. Those of you that know me, that is gigantic. That is gigantic. Okay, so it's good stuff. And I honestly think that... I mean, I'm just going to lay it out there. I was down and out last week. I wasn't feeling great, but throughout the week, I clawed myself back up. I felt really good. And I did some things during Stu's charity stream. For those of you who don't know, Stu, the Universal Toy Collector, and a lot of us got together, went on Stu's channel to raise money for Give Kids the World Village. And it was a 24-hour stream from 3 p.m. to 3 p.m. UK time, which was just a bombastic affair. There was a lot of great panels, a lot of crazy discussions, and almost every single one of them got off topic at some point or another. And I was lucky enough to participate in 2 of them, and I had an absolute blast. And I may have gotten myself and Stu in a little bit of trouble by saying, hey, if we hit $5,000, Stu's going to grow a beard and keep it for 6 months. Stu later went on to say, if we hit 5,000, I'll keep it till the end of the year. Well, guess what? At the last second, some people swooped in and made sure we hit it. We hit 5220, so $5,220, which was amazing on an original 1,500 goal, which was met like the first 2 hours or something. It was insane. And I loved it. And now Stu is keeping his word as far as I know. I mean, if he hasn't shaved since he started the stream, he's 3 days in, you see. And I gave him a lot of crap about his glasses, but he just crushed it. I mean, 24 hours in a desk chair, even if you take breaks every 2 hours, which he dutifully did, it's not easy to do this. Never mind the organization that it takes to get a bunch of people from different time zones together and keep them all on the same page, and then keep yourself alert and on the same page during the stream itself. And I gotta say, between him and Georgie and everyone else, like, it went off without a hitch. I mean, it was consistently entertaining, and it was heartwarming, and it was just the shot in the arm that I needed. So even though I'm really grateful that we raised all this money for them, it was at its core a really good time surrounded by great people that gave me some much needed energy. So my hat is off literally and proverbially. I'm so grateful to have been able to participate. And that brings me to something else. I'm not prepared to go into details, but I will say that my anniversary of my channel is around 6 months after Stu. Stu works his charity stream around his anniversary of his channel, more or less. And I've been thinking about it, and after talking with him, we're going to do our own version of that kind of live stream. I want to do 12 hours because I know I can't do 24. I couldn't do 24 just watching what he did. I've done 24 hours in the past. It's not for me. But we'll do a 12-hour stream. It is also going to benefit Give Kids the World Village. It'll happen sometime in early October, depending upon how things pan out. But more details will be there to come. A lot of you are going to get messages asking you to participate. And we'll figure out some really fun, cool stuff to do. So that is on the books. We're doing this in October. So this way, every 6 months, we can raise some great money for a great cause and have a great time and commune. That's what community is. You can't spell community without commune. So I just wanted to bring that out, let you know that if you had fun, you don't have to wait long to do it again. That's a promise. We're going to do this together. So we're getting that done. Let me catch up with chat here before I go into anything else. Stu says, nothing to report yet. Just give it a week or two. Calm down. Yeah, Badger, I see you. And I can't not bring up this one. Yep. And we're going to get Keith on the show between now and that charity stream. That's something it's going to happen soon. I got to get with him on that. Ian, I see your other comment. We're going to get to that in a second. Thank you, Connor. I appreciate you. Yes, Robert, I am feeling better. Thank you, buddy. Kieran Ball's in the house, says hello to everybody. It's good to see you, buddy. Good to see you. Milford says, emu oil helps when my lower back hurts. Good anti-inflammatory. Oh, you're not kidding. You'll have to text me about that because I'm not sure if you ingest it, if you rub it on there or what. Like, is emu oil where you just put a bunch of emu into like a vat and just melt them down and whatever's left is the oil? Is it like head cheese or something else? Let me know. Text me. Badger says, Jim was like a child on their third soda during Stu stream, so much energy. I mean, you gotta figure that the whole day, like I started when the show started, I watched everything. I wasn't always able to listen, but I was watching everything, and I was chatting along, and there were so many jokes I didn't get to make, so many things I wanted to comment on, so many discussions I wanted to be in on, so when I got my chance, it was like letting a bull out of the gate, like, so yeah. A lot like a child on a third soda, for sure. No question about it. And I agree, Goji, that... no, wait. Oh. No, that's not what I want to bring up, but thank you for marking the date. Where is it? Ah, yes. Stu is a champion. And Georgie. Georgie, whew, she did a lot of stuff. She's awesome. I love her to death. Just Jeff is here. Nice to see you. Robert tried to watch as much as he could, but missed the end. There were some good chats, though, for sure. I had tried to sleep, and then I got up. I was going to sleep from like 4 a.m. here until like 7. I was thinking to myself about 3 hours to sleep. My body decided that wasn't happening. It's like, I want water. So I drank like lots of water, and then finally was able to just re-engage in the stream properly. And then I unceremoniously fell asleep for no reason and woke up literally in the last 10 minutes of the stream. Like, my body just woke up and I was watching the stream. It was great. So I was glad to catch the end. It made a lot of difference. I would have felt horrible if I hadn't been able to see it. So it's a whole thing. Billy Wifta's in the house. I've got some news for him he's going to love. Do-do-do-do-do-do. Do-do-do-do-do-do. And Kieran Ball says, I don't know about the without a hitch. I'm like, look, there are always going to be glitches, but hitches are different. Like, the stream never came to a grinding halt, no pun intended. Things happen when you're human and you're up for 24 hours. That's all I got to say. Logic Blaster, haven't seen you for a while. I'm glad to see you, and yes, I'm very well. Thank you. Keith's Playmobil Palooza with special guest Grindhead Jim. Yeah, after seeing his latest update video on where that's going, I'm like, I want to see that. I want to talk about that, because he brought up some great points about Playmobil, and was really, for lack of a better word, like dead honest about the Playmobil's like benefits and detriments in the toy space. I love what he's doing, and I would love to have him on just because he's a friend, but also that's a good subject to talk about. Yeah. It was pent up for hours. It's like, okay, rah. Plus, I knew that you were running out of energy. That's the point in time where you start to go. And I said, I'm going to come on here with such force that it forces Stu to relax a little bit and get some rest passively. I hope it worked that way. I really do. But that was my goal. Spoilers. And yes, all of you Muppets out there, hit the like button. Absolutely. Only glitch was Stu's math early on. Early on? It was about half the stream the math was a problem. I think the math had more to do with him not reading. Look, Stu did awesome, Georgie's awesome, and a lot of memorable things happened because of it. Yes. Ian Sweeney says, Snake Mountain is down to under 70 pounds on UK Amazon currently. It'll go down further. Castle Grayskull is around $60 US, give or take. I've seen it as low as $35. Snake Mountain's going to do the same, and I'm tempted to get doubles of each, but I'm not in a hurry. Maths. Exactly. Logic Blaster says, Jim, have you checked out the new animated series X-Men 97? Seems pretty cool so far. I watched the opening of it just to see what it was like, because I knew they'd have to redraw it for widescreen. I really enjoyed that, and I stopped it. I'm going to wait till at least 5 episodes are out before I check it out. Steve says, I got excited here and wanted to give things away a bit too early and need to wear glasses. We'll get you some bifocals, mate. That's what we'll do. It'll work. I know it sucks to put them on, but once they're on, like, fuck it. Like, people can get over it, you know? And I agree with Kieran that you were and are amazing. So we're all good. So, there are those of you that probably saw my social media posts over the weekend about revealing something during that stream. You cannot go back to that stream to watch them, because the whole billing of this is the one time you got to be there or not be there. And that's why I wanted to do the reveal there. I worked all day long. I should say Lauren and I worked all day long during the stream to make this happen. One of the things that I find myself apologizing for the most in the last year of being here is that the display is not where it should be. And I've always said what my game plan is for that, is at the shelf all the way on this side of the screen. Well, I'm happy to say that it's 90% there. And don't worry, you don't have to like squint. I've got some shots to show you. Those of you who've been with me a long time know that my first best love is the Superpowers collection. And that was the first toy line that I collected in earnest, and I went nuts those first few months and got everything that I wanted for the most part, with very few exceptions. Now, I still don't have everything out. For example, none of the McFarlane stuff is out of the package and on the shelf. There's some in the package, whatever. But this is the first time that the bulk of my Superpowers collection has ever been displayed. And let me go ahead and show you guys what it looks like in close-up. This is the main shelf with the Hall of Justice, mainly Series 1 characters, a couple of Series 2s. Superman is in the Supermobile, so he is in there. You got Wonder Woman there in the front-ish. I moved her up front because I really wanted her to be there. We had to put Flash sitting, which, because his legs have gotten even looser over time. Same with Martian Manhunter. We're trying to figure out the best ways to stand these guys up. I got to get some new stands for them or whatnot. And the implication, if you look to the far left, is that Green Arrow has shot off Brainiac's arm because I haven't got a chance to fix it yet. So now, go to the second shelf. You've got Darkseid's Destroyer. I've got some work to do on that because I haven't found the new cannons that I ordered a while back. I have them in here. They're on the shelves. I just don't know where on the shelves they are. But you got Darkseid, Desaad, Parademon, Calabac and his boulder launcher thingy-majiggy. I forget the name of it. Boulder Bomber, that's what it's called. The Lexor 7 and the McFarlane Supermobile, McFarlane Invisible Jet. Go to the third shelf. We've got a kind of a bat cave kind of a thing going on, mixed with a little bit of Metropolis. So that archway and the landing pad are from the Batman playset that Gotatron turned me on to way back when. And so I got both my Dark Knight Batcopter there, my modified Dark Knight Batcopter, which has been painted, custom painted, and donated to the channel by Billy Wifta, along with the cycle that comes with that, the Batman kit, a little computer, and a nice table. The original Superpowers Batmobile with an OG Batman and OG Robin in tow, and a 3D printed version of an unreleased prototype phone booth with Clark Kent. Now, if you put two figures in there, you can swirl along and make Clark Kent turn into Superman. And then all the figures that were on those three shelves kind of conglomerated on the bottom shelf behind me. So you've got a bunch of G.I. Joe classifieds in the center, surrounded by some MCU, a bunch of comic Marvel Legends, and a couple boxes of Marvel Legends in the back. And then you got Jubilee in the Bratz car being like, hey, what's going on? So that is a huge display update so far. Looking forward to having more done, obviously, but once the seal is broken, as Gotatron has said, like, it's going to be hard. And Boba Hicks has said this too. Once you get going, it's going to be hard to stop. And with that in mind, I went further as to clean the room a little bit. So before, there was a bunch of other stuff behind me that was, like, there was a big bin and some stuff, like a lot of Badger stuff, some of my stuff that I keep for selling. And I was like, I'm just going to put this in a closet. So I did that, rearranged the stuff that was around so now I can actually walk in and out of the room without a major issue. And it looks nice. I mean, and granted, you won't see most of it when I'm sitting here, but it's fun for me. So that was the big reveal that I had. I know that it may not be the most exciting thing for a lot of you, especially if you've already seen it, but it means a fuckload to me. Because this is fulfilling that promise of moving here in the first place. And it gives me a lot of ideas about what we have to do when we, buy our house, either later this year, early next year, depending upon how the market treats us. So I just wanted to show that to you. So that's that. Let me catch up with chat here. Looking is free. Touching is going to cost a little extra. It's true. It's true. No McFarlane, what a shame. Ah, the sarcasm. Now, I got to get some of those figures out of the packaging and on the shelf because they're great figures. Thank you, Stu. Thank you, thank you. Badger says, so much vibrant, so much color. Yes. Yeah, that Dr. Fate is pretty much definitive. It's great, but, it's arguably, they are great, but obviously this one is the best. It's my favorite. It's the first one I ever saw. It's how I got introduced to things in Dr. Fateland. Got that stairwell from your Avengers from Marvel Universe. Oh, nice. I mean, that's, any 4-inch figures will work well with that thing, and you can still get that thing for less than $20 US. So it's the Batman, the Batcave playset. And it comes with some nice figures and other accessories, which I still have. I just have them I cut down the insert and I threw the box away. Finally. But then where that box was sitting up here on this shelf way over here, my Dark Side Destroyer box is being displayed for the first time ever, which is so good. I love it. I love it. Yes, the Raptors are definitely like, yes. They're definitely just going, yes. You're right. Yeah, it does. There's definitely a Superman vibe to it. Like, you could easily take that thing, paint it white, and make a Fortress of Solitude kind of a thing, which I might end up doing. You see, my sound is really good. Where do I have my mic? Tip of my index finger is touching it now, so it's right. It's about a foot from me, and I have it dialed into where the gain's pretty high, so it's a bit hot. But I know this mic well enough that if I project more than a lot of people do. You know, from doing vocals like that kind of for so long, I tend to project. Like Lauren can hear me from across the apartment when I do this. I'm not yelling, but it carries. So, you know, back in the day, I'd be doing Twitch and I'd be like, but now I just speak the way I speak in conversation when I'm out in public, and that tends to work. So it's a combination of things. I think most people would have to have it about half as close, but with these settings, you can kind of mess around. I'm using a Behringer Euphoria UM2 interface, which is like a, I don't know, 50-pound interface. This mic's an Audio-Technica AT10? AT40? Whichever one is the XLR input. And that one's about a 90-pound mic, but I've had it for since 2017, so just shy of 7 years. So, and a lot of it comes down to knowing how to tweak things. Like you're saying, you're going to do some mic tests. If you ever want to sit down one night and have me help you mess around with some stuff, just let me know, man. Same thing with OBS, anything else. Like, I love teaching people that stuff. So that's what's been happening thus far today. I'm going to go ahead and talk about 3D printing, because I have been doing something, and I have something to show you. So, during the break between the panel I was scheduled for and the movie music soundtrack thing, I found a file for a vinyl, display, and I printed it, got about halfway done with it. I'm like, that's good enough, and I ripped it off the bed and used it. It's supposed to go about this high, but because I needed to have it before the show started, and it was about a 2-hour print, and I had to do some other things, but I printed this, and it's pretty solid, and I like it. It's really cool. It doesn't take a lot of material, and even halfway, it worked perfect, worked a treat. So it was funny to me, because Lauren's like, what are you printing? I was like, I'm printing a little vinyl easel for the music thing. She goes, oh, cool. And so I want to print a bunch more of those so I can just kind of have somewhere to display. Like, I might install a floating shelf over top of the 3D printer and put a few vinyls, or clear that off and put them there. I don't know. But it was so nice to have those, to have that for the show. And some people probably thought that I was insane for printing it, but that just goes to show you, with 3D printing, if you have an idea and someone has made the file, it can be in your life within a couple hours if you need something quick. So, never stop believing, right? Not sure why a Journey song fits in there, but, here we are, right? Okay. So on the currently available and pre-order front, I'm going to start with something that was here and gone before I even barely realized it. And I want to thank Joey Ricondo for cluing me in, because I didn't even see the announcement. I would have missed this were it not for him. But what we saw was that Mattel Creations did a Motu Origin Cyclone figure last week. I want to say it was Thursday. Pretty sure it was Thursday that it went out. I could be wrong. I'd have to look at the emails. Either Tuesday or Thursday. And he messaged me on Instagram. Was like, hey, can I get that? I'm like, what are you talking about? He gave me the link, and I was able to get one, and he sold out in about an hour and a half, which, you know, given that these are the way Mattel Creation stuff tends to go, that's not too bad, and he was a highly sought-after figure, so. And they did some reveals last week. There's a few good figures coming out. They, for the most part, most of them are a bit more on the obscure side. But that's not a bad thing, per se. It's just kind of... it's going to be a question of who wants what at this point. Robert says, that Cyclone flew off like a helicopter. You're not wrong. And he looks really cool. He does have the twisting feature, but you don't lose any of the cool stuff with him. He's got, you know, his original shield accessory. He has Cyclone hands you can put on there, which that is so cool. And then you have this that little disc thing in the back that also acts like a... I don't know if it's supposed to be a shield or what it is. Is it supposed to be... What's it say? Removable back disc wings. I have to be very careful when I say that, like instead of saying dick wings, you know. But there's some cool stuff to be had with this figure for sure. It does have the lenticular sticker, which is classic. Comes with its own comic. They even spoilered some of the pages there. That's kind of cool. He does come in a collector's edition box, which is an interesting choice. It means to me, that means they probably were going to make this a retail release and decided against it at the last second. Because someone higher up probably got scared he was going to peg warm. So they put him in a collector's edition box, but still put him out on Mattel Creations. On the back here, you can clearly see that this is the Fright Zone. There's no question in my mind this is the Fright Zone. Which means that they're definitely going to be putting this out. It's a question of how they're going about it. I think that they probably looked at that survey they did with fans a year or two ago and kind of used it as a gauge for what they could get away with at retail. And Fright Zone being a relatively small thing, I bet you we see that at retail. So the snake layer that has never been done before, that'll certainly be a crowdfund. And then the Fright Zone, I'm guessing, will be retail, and then we'll see what happens with the rest of it. He spin right round. Ian Sweet says, at least they seem to have fixed their international shipping issues. Yes. Thank goodness. Logic Blaster says, Jim, I stopped paying attention to most pre-order stuff a while ago, so you're correct to talk about less now. Well, there's less to talk about, too. Ben Stelly's here, says, hey, Jim, hey, Jet, bit late. Hey, don't worry about it, man. I appreciate you. Appreciate you. So there's more. But like I said, there's less... there are just less interesting pre-orders coming out right now, and I'm not mad about that. Because that just means that there's a slower pace at which we can do stuff. It's not as ridiculous. I think that they were going so nuts with product, you know, COVID and post-COVID, they're realizing, okay, we can kind of calm down a little bit for some reason. But here we go. So with available now stuff, the scrap heap from Junkion just came in stock. He's easy to get. You get two of them, and you have a rider and a vehicle, which is cool. I was slipping on this. I didn't even realize this was coming out. I am very tempted to get me a couple of these, but it's going to have to wait right now. So getting right into some pretty ridiculous stuff. Star Ace's Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. This is the deluxe version. The non-deluxe version is a little bit less, but for $200, even though it's 11 inches, he's got some good articulation on him. It's a nice, big, tall boy. And as nice as he is, I can't figure out for the life of me what could possibly make him cost this much. I have no idea. For $100, I would consider it because it is really nice. And to have that tall, you know, a 12-inch Marshmallow Man versus, you know, a 5-inch Ghostbuster, that's a cool idea, but, you know, as it is the one that they put out, you know, even the reissue is like 8 inches, I think. So getting that extra 4 would make a difference, but not for this guy. if you're looking for a trap jaw, if you never got a trap jaw, which I believe he is coming back, but in case he doesn't, the cartoon version looks great. You could repaint a couple things and be off to the races. But he's in stock. Grab him. He looks great. The reissue of Zodak is in stock. Zodak was commanding some pretty hefty prices for a while there. But now that there's a reissue out, the only market for the original is if you're one of those people that have to have all the variants. I am not. I am not. So, in other news, Boss Fight Studios doing these blanks, these 6-inch blanks, and they have these available in 3 different colors. They all have these alternate heads, they have a stand, alternate feet even. So you've got 4 different heads, 3 pairs of hands, 2 pair of feet, one with boots, one with bare feet. They come in gray, brown, or bronze, depending on who you talk to, and like a flesh color. All right, so they come in all 3 of those colors for both male and female. Let's find, there she is. So she has, again, 4 different heads, 3 pair of hands, 2 pair of feet, and these are obviously designed to hit the customizer market. And for that price, if you're any good with paint, and if you already do some custom stuff, or you go to a guy like Cape Master, these are going to be some really cool things. Getting back to Transformers, we're getting into pre-orders again. Those are also pre-orders. There's a bunch of Transformers that came up, but the only one that really caught my eye was this Gears. I have a soft spot for Gears, mainly because of his role in the 3rd issue of the original limited series for Transformers, where he met Spider-Man. Something about him, I love him. Yes, I pre-ordered him, but he's there. Get him while you can. And then also we have a Vintage Collection R2-D2 from A New Hope. Now, I've got 2 Vintage Collection R2-D2s from, I want to say he's Empire Strikes Back. I don't know. Probably. But he is up for pre-order again. If you need one, get one. I pre-ordered one even though I don't need one, because I have this weird FOMO with C-3PO and R2-D2, because they are sometimes the hardest motherfuckers to get. And I don't know why. But if you need one, there he is. They also have a great-looking Princess Leia, but that is up for you to decide. Now, there are 2 different wall breakers that are out there for Ghostbusters. And one is the Terror Dog that you see, another one is Slimer, and he kind of glows, which is really cool. It's $300. This thing is massive, though. It's, the head's about tall, so you can imagine how wide those horns are. And if I had more disposable income, this is one of those weird things I think would be really fun to put on a wall in a collection room. But it's still too much. But it looks cool. I love the way that it looks. The Slimer one might even be more your vibe. And just because he's overpriced, I've done 2 overpriced things so far. I gotta do a statue, right? So closing things out, we have this Static 6 Conan and Valeria 6-scale statue. So he's 25 inches tall, but that's with the sword. So I imagine that's, what about like this, more or less? So that would put him with the stand about this tall. So it's basically a 7-inch figure on a big stand with a long sword. But it looks really cool. But not $380 worth of cool. Okay? It's not for me. It may be for you, but it is not for me. Let me catch up with you guys here. Connor says, there's about $150 hit me next month for pre-orders. But yeah, I've been having to make some hard choices lately. Ian Sweeney says they've threatened a TBC HasLab to reveal on Star Wars Day. Really hope it's not the one I want. Fair enough. Yeah, that Marshmallow Man ain't $200 cool. I agree, Jeff. I really do. $100 I think would be maybe, because the detail's there, the functionality is there. Badger says, get a 12-inch Trendmaster Godzilla to fight Stay Puft Man and have the fight of the century. I mean, I've already got 12-inch Godzillas from Playmates over here. Plus, I got the 15-inch one from that roadside attraction. Mm-hmm. I also like that cartoon Trapjaw just as he is. He's very tempting. Let them fight. Exactly. Karen Ball says it'll make a great Rogue Trooper custom. So there's a lot of things you can do with those for sure. And I also I think they're going to sell like hotcakes because customizers are going to have a field day, just so they have parts, right? Logic Blaster's hoping that the Vintage Collection vehicle will be a Sandcrawler or an Imperial Shuttle. If it's a Sandcrawler, I'll be like, yay for the fans, I'm really happy, but I don't want one. If it's an Imperial Shuttle, I might have to have a hard discussion with my wife. I hate to say that, because I am getting to a point where I've decided that I'm not just doing Empire Strikes Back, I've also got some Return of the Jedi stuff, and that's all I'm messing with, really. But Imperial Shuttle will be hard to pass up, unless it's a crazy, crazy price. If it's under $400, I'll probably get it. And yeah, that TVC Ghost was too big and expensive. A micro, yeah, there you go. Badger's always telling you can go smaller if you want. Ooh, too expensive. See, Bill likes it when I show off expensive stuff. I mean, you know. Of course you just want the Valeria Kieran. I mean, I get it. But yeah. See, he's into it, you know. Yeah, and the Ghost, I think a lot of people were like, there's no way. And it totally got back, and I was like, oh, well, I've underestimated that. Let's see. Jeff says, I have so much bullshit coming in, I lost track. I mean, I feel you. Apparently, Drunk Jeff ordered 5 vampires from Mythic Legions. The sale, so it's a weird surprise, because what the fuck? I completely agree. Robert's got to run. Life's calling, but catch Wrestle Replay. Also, the cartoon collection is rad. It is. It is. So, yes. So I'm going to take a drink of water, and we're going to get into today's topic. Manic Plastic Toy Shop in the house. Hey, Jim. Hey, you. How you doing? Good to see ya. All right. So the title of today's show, as you probably can tell, if you have seen, if you have heard, is the Stan Lee Parable. Now, a parable is a tale that imparts some kind of morality. All right. Now, astute viewers of the show, and I'm looking at you, Badger, know this is also a play on words with regards to a very popular, very meta game called the Stanley Parable. That's the name Stanley Parable. And that was by design. I wanted to see if people would catch it. But this really is about Stan Lee. I'm not really talking about the game or anything. But here's the thing. Yes, Badger, you are very astute today, my friend. Good on you. Stan Lee, it cannot be argued, altered the course of Western culture forever. Okay, I don't think I'm overextending when I say that. If you think about the influence he had even before he was the Stan Lee we know and love, he had a hand in helping a lot of some of the best comics come to life. Then he started writing them. Then he got really angry and just went rip. And then we got Fantastic Four, Avengers, Thor, Spider-Man, right? And, you know, X-Men, Black Panther. Like, I think that with the influence Marvel has had, with the influence that the Marvel Comics had on kind of the pulse of the culture at the time and how it was both, you know, giving energy to the culture, but also taking energy from it to inspire things like Black Panther, like Tony Stark. You know, Tony Stark was an answer to the anti-military industrial complex vibe of the 60s and said, I'm going to give them a military industrial complex guy that they like, just to see if I can pull it off. And he did. And, you know, I don't think there's any question, even from Stan himself, he was supported by amazing artists all the way throughout. Steve Ditko, Jack Kirby, John Romita, both senior and junior. Rest in peace, senior. Rest in peace, everyone I've mentioned so far except for Romita Jr. You know, Sal Buscema, John Buscema, the list goes on, right? So many crazy good artists and other writers. There's one thing to create a character and then kind of get him going, but then, you know, there's scores, hundreds of artists and writers that took over and took these characters in different places that have then lived on. So the number one part of what I want to talk about is, first, the whole concept that there was people like calling him out on not including the artist when he says what he created. And I kind of side with him on it a little bit, in the sense of, if I say I've got this idea that I created from my head, and you have an artist bring it to life, yes, they are co-creators, but the initial thought came from Stan. Now, there may be many times where that wasn't always exactly how it went down. I don't claim to know it. I know there's some, shall we say, contested history there. But I will say that you take the Stan Lee that was involved with those characters. You take the Stan Lee that then became kind of a, you know, the chairman emeritus, of Marvel, was kind of the figurehead for the company for a long time, and then went on to do some other really cool stuff as well. The fact that he kind of became the figurehead of just pop culture, you know, comic book and cartoon pop culture, and was pervasive in so many ways to what we now kind of consider, you know, like the primary, you know, mythos culture of the world, you know. And you could even say he influenced DC by what he was doing, because DC was a reaction to Marvel, and Marvel was a reaction to DC all the time. Plus, they were switching artists back and forth and whatnot. And you cannot take away his influence. No matter how the narrative may have been skewed over time about how things went, I think at the end of the day, his legacy, even if tarnished, is nearly unmatched in pop culture. So I want to start there. I'm going to start there. And I want to see what you guys have to say about that as we go along. Oh, hey, Tia. Good to see ya. Didn't mean for that to rhyme, but here we are. Blink. It's good to see ya. Shane, nice to see you, pal. Welcome to the show. TJC as well. Nice to see ya. I had no idea you were in the same technical brain as I was. We need to talk sometime, because I liked what you were doing there, and I'm sitting on my couch going, like trying to help out. So it's always good to see you, brother. Am I playing devil's advocate? No. Who's the devil in this situation? If you can explain that to me, maybe I am. Logic Blaster says Stan Lee is similar to George Lucas. He created the concepts, but worked with talented people to bring it to life. That's probably the most accurate definition that's out there. Probably. Gotatron says, and this is somebody who, I know he's a huge Marvel fan, so this will be interesting to read. Great pitch man, hype man, idea man, and ambassador for comics. Wrote great, relatable dialogue. Just some questions on the creative side of things. Yeah, I would say that's also pretty damn accurate. Gotatron says, I think Lee and Kirby went stronger together than each of them were solo. I agree 100%. And despite my issues with Ditko as a person, okay, I have some big issues with what that guy thought was right about the world and how he treated his perception of his fame. I think that he did some of the best comic art that ever existed. His design of the Spider-Man costume remains to this day the single best design of that costume that probably will ever exist, frankly. But he's responsible for so much stuff. But here's a guy who absolutely flatly refused to talk to anyone at any time. There's a great documentary that was put out for the BBC, and it's called In Search of Steve Ditko, I believe. I managed to find it on YouTube at some point and just devoured it. But that's kind of where I'm going with this. Like, Stan Lee is one thing, but the other guys, there's, you can go back to like the Schusters and Simon and Schuster, and there's a lot of different. You've got Bob Kane and Bill Finger with that's a whole other thing. So like on a scale of 1 to 10, if Bob Kane's treatment of Bill Finger is a 10 on the you shouldn't have done that scale, I think Stan Lee's whole thing with creativity is probably a 4 at best. I don't think he never disacknowledged his artists. I think amidst all this stuff with Simon and Schuster and Kane and Finger, I think that it was like, well, let's bring Marvel up to the same standard, which makes sense. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. But I seriously do not believe that Stan was malicious when he may have worded things the way he worded them over the years. I really don't believe that. And if anyone wants to argue that, let's have a talk, because I don't think that. Melvor asked who Stan Lee's Jar Jar would be. It's a good question. That's a really good question, actually. There's a couple possibilities there. There's one villain that stands out for me, but Stan Lee didn't directly create him. Like the Spot is one I think that works. And there's certainly some pretty out there stuff. I'll leave it to chat to figure that out. She says, I always appreciate the help, but in this case, just my system's too long in the tooth. Yeah, but I want to see if there's a way to, I don't know, we'd have to have a talk offline, but I'm not saying that your system doesn't need to be updated. It totally does. But I want to make sure that you're not doing what I did 8 years ago and going way too hard, because you're right, the costs to build a PC have gone up so high. I don't want you to spend as much as I did. That's all I have to say. Karen Ball says, I loved Stan Lee as a kid, but as I got older, I realized he was not the only one involved creating the real Marvel Universe. I don't think I ever felt that he was the only person. My first introduction to Stan was the Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, and knowing that he was integral to Spider-Man himself, hearing his voice. So I think I've always associated Stan Lee in a positive way, First thing that pops into Gojatron's head is the Impossible Man. Oh, that's a good one. Okay. All right. So, but with Stan Lee, all the other creators that we've mentioned, what I'm getting at here is the thought about legacy, right? And I'll give you an example. Another example, which is going to feel really off to some of you, and I want you to go with me here, okay? John Wayne, arguably one of the best actors of the mid-century, certainly one of the best Western actors of any age ever. Probably second only to Clint Eastwood in that respect. And again, that's debatable as well. Made no bones about who he was as a person, made no bones about his lifestyle or his opinions. I did an interview in early 1970s with Playboy magazine. Said some not really flattering things about his ideas of race relations, and the women's liberation movement, equal rights. Said a lot of shit that was not cool. Probably even by those standards, but less unacceptable by the standards of the day. All right? This is early 1970s, like 72 or 73. Maybe 74. The point being, not later than 75. 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, I start to see that he's trending on Twitter. And I'm like, what? Why? Come to find out, the people had someone went out of their way and found this article and read it and got really pissed off at these things he said. At this point, guy's been dead for 40 years plus, almost, and he said those things almost 50 years ago, or 50 years ago, depending on the year. What is the point of having outrage over it? What does that accomplish? Can someone explain that to me? You can't hold him accountable anymore. What he said was in the context of a completely different cultural time period. What's the point of being upset by these things, right? If we apply this similar thing to Stan Lee, for example, a weird thing occurs. Throughout his entire career, he was pushing for equality. He was pushing for racial integration and so forth. Yes, his attitudes towards women weren't the best, but they were better than most of his contemporaries of the day. He was always pushing a somewhat progressive agenda without it being, shall we say, annoying. He was trying to progress, not force ideals on you. There was always a morality to what he was doing. And, you know, I don't feel like I hear enough about that, right? Motherfuckers will go and find an article of a guy who was bigoted and flip out about it, but won't really realize that, you know, this guy, Stan Lee, for over nearly a full century, okay, just shy of a century, was a huge influence on some really important points of things we needed as a culture to progress, and in many ways have fulfilled that, right? You know, if you compare that to, say, a Gene Roddenberry, like, we really haven't gotten anywhere near what Gene Roddenberry was after, okay? We aspire to some of that Star Trek stuff, but we're not even close to it. Like, a lot of the technology is caught up, but the ideals aren't. I would say Stan Lee had more of a cultural impact of things that actually kind of came to be. But I just like... So really, today's show is about the legacy of creatives and how that works, because you have the person, you have the work, and sometimes they're inseparable, but sometimes they are. So I could say that John Wayne's westerns are very separable from John Wayne the bigoted fuckhead. You know what I mean? Versus, I don't think you can really separate Stanley the Man from the comics as much, because he's a writer. He's putting his ideas out there. Just like I think Steve Ditko is a piece of shit, but as a person, but his artwork is undeniable. But I tend to separate that. It's not a hard and loose, fast rule that you can just apply to anybody. It's kind of, you have to judge each one at their core. Gotratron says there's no point to 90% of the outrage on the internet. I agree. I really do. Sir Clifton says, I'm shocked to hear that for the time Playboy had articles. Now, why on earth did I miss those? Fair enough. Goji also says, I think Stan always wanted to advance his own position of power and influence, and his co-creators got left behind by his ambition. I would agree with that. And I think that them getting left behind was probably a 50-50 in terms of blame, right? A lot of these artists, Steve Ditko especially, didn't want any limelight, right? And there's also the somewhat infamous story where Stan and Jack were interviewed for a newspaper article in New York, and there was lengthy interviews with them both, and the article focused on Stan and said something not so great about Jack Kirby in like a one-off, like 2-sentence paragraph, you know? So I think there was a public perception aspect to that too. So you could argue there was like a 3-pronged approach to that. But again, with, you know, the rights to characters and the agendas of certain things, because publishing worked very differently. Like, you know, in a pre-Image Comics world, things were very different. There's some great interview stuff that I've heard from Neil Adams and how he talked about ownership rights to characters and what they were trying to do even back when he was a much more active artist, and rest in peace to him as well. And he applauded what the Image guys did. You know, he thought that it should always have been that way. So I think that while you're definitely correct that that was true, I think that the context of it probably, again, it was a different time, right? And then I can extend that to certain metal bands where the lyrics are really bombastic and have a really caustic attitude towards certain religions and cultures, and even if their reasoning behind that might have merit, the actual words they're using are like, dude, you might want to back off a little bit. Meanwhile, the music itself is just awesome, and so the question is, okay, in the case of a piece of music that has vocals, can you really separate the lyrics from the music at that point? Is that a morally sound thing to do? Like if someone's lyrics were like, literally punch your mother in the face every second of every day for the rest of time. And granted, if someone actually wrote those lyrics, it's probably a joke, but let's say they meant it. I don't care how good the song is, I'm not going to be real comfortable with that, right? So, but again, I'm trying to talk about this entire sphere of culture and human influence and the cultural feedback into people and all this stuff. So I want you to give me some more examples that you can think of. Tell me what works for you, what doesn't work for you, etc. ad nausea. Kieran Ball says, in the UK, once beloved celebrities who have been revealed as monsters in real life have been virtually wiped from history. TV programs and films have either been binned or altered to remove them. And look, we got plenty of those in America as well. Kevin Spacey comes to mind immediately, among others. And I don't really know what's right to do. I know what I might think I would prefer, right? But I don't know that I would go as far as that type of censorship, even though I understand why it's done. Because let's be honest, Kieran, and I think you'll agree with me, the UK is pretty heavy-handed when it comes to censorship. At least it was in the 80s for sure. Less so now, but there's still a lot of, like, they're quick to go yoink. You know what I mean? It's a good thing to note. Go to Tron, bringing up the more particulars of what I was talking about. Neil Adams was responsible for Siegel and Schuster finally getting credit for Superman in '78. Yes, he was really big on that stuff. He had a whole. It was he was stopping short of unionizing, even if that's something he probably would have wanted. You know what I mean? But yes, he really was up there for that. You bet. Billy Wifta says, if you want to see how Kirby felt about Stan, take a look at Funky Flashman and Mr. Miracle. Might have to. And Jason Garcia, you are dead on. Basically every Infinite Annihilator song. Correct. Now, with IA, I would say that 95% of everything they say in their lyrics is complete fantasy jokedom. It is there to shock and nothing but. It's different, I think, when a band has an agenda. I'll use Acheron as an example. And certainly many other bands, right? But this whole big question becomes like, where do you separate the art from the artist? What is the legacy of the artist after the fact? Like, these things are huge. They're huge to think about. Now, let me see here. I don't know if I can get Ninja VDO to work properly, but I'm going to try. Let me see if it's even here. I think I can. Properties. Right? Yeah. Copy link. Boop. Copy link. Delete that. Okay. So, for my YouTube members and Patreon folks, if you would like to come in and discuss this for a little while, you're more than welcome to do so. You want to go to the Video Ninja link that's on Patreon, Patreon or the YouTube community page. If you're on Patreon, just look for anything tagged TGL panel. Okay, and this should bring everybody in. The problem is I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to the part I'm worried about is actually getting into the damn thing. Okay. Go here.
Okay. So I'm going to take off my camera. Okay, so they should be able to hear me. Okay. All right. We'll get somewhere with this. We'll get there. And I will put on some headphones. This is in case someone wants to show up. Now, I will warn you, stay on topic. I'm not here to talk about frickin' Mattel Creations in here. I want to talk about this whole thing of legacy and whatnot. Echo. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I have to fix that. Oh, that sucks. All right, so let me do this.
Can you guys still hear me okay? Does this still work for you guys? Because if so, this should be enough. Sorry about that. So those of you that are members of the YouTube channel or of Patreon, the links are listed right there in the feed. On Patreon is tagged TGL panel, and there's only a few posts you'd have to go back to find it on the YouTube community page. Furthermore, if you really want to come in and you are a member and you just cannot find it, just send me a message on Instagram or Facebook or something, and I will get you the link as quickly as I can. Okay? Okay. So there we go. So Kieran Ball says, funny you should say that, Jim. The UK has just altered their film certification labels, increasing PG films to 15 due to violence and nudity because classic movies cause all the world's troubles. Apparently so. Daredevil Dave's Jeeps and Joe says, what's up, Jim? Not much, man. How you doing? We're in the group conversation portion of the show for our Patreon members and YouTube members. I'm going to give you guys until 10 after. I don't get any indication people are coming on. No big deal. We'll go back and continue the conversation just on the other screen. Not a big deal. We'll get it working for you. All right. So Ben Stutley's going out. Good night, sir. And then, another interesting little example I can throw out there while I'm waiting. Ninja Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, directly ripped off Frank Miller's Daredevil, and even made a reference to it in the origin story. It was a complete parody, and later kind of, built up to a much larger original thing than what it was intended to be. Now, from what I understand, Frank Miller never really cared. It is what it is. But should they have been held responsible for some form of plagiaristic thing? I don't think they should have, but depending upon how much of a stickler you are for these things, they may very well could have been. It just depends upon where your moral compass goes, if that makes sense, right? So do Ninja Turtles fall under some weird things with creator power or message, right? Is that something weird? Bill's like, oh, give me a sec. Like, all right, man, no problem. So I'll just send it to you directly on the old Instagram there just to make it easy. Since I know you're thinking of coming. Where are you out of here? All right. Yes, I am using Video Ninja. This would be my first time doing it live, and I haven't had a lot of chance to mess with it, frankly. So part of why I have the panel on offering is to get used to using it, frankly. There's probably other ways to do this that would make things a little bit easier, but I'm not certain of that yet. But I'll get there. I've barely dabbled in the damn thing at all. So, any thoughts on the Ninja Turtles from you guys? I'm guessing the reason some people are quiet is because they're trying to find their way to the panel, which, that's fine by me. That's what it's here for, right? Using is fun, personally. Yeah, I do too. And I think that when you examine the fact that they had this thing that was meant to just be for fun, that they're able to make something that big out of it, I think it's cool. TJC says, I've used it a few times, having people while I'm playing games, and the 3 guys on the game's pretty good. Yeah, I know that Bill Wifta uses this too. It's come highly recommended, and if I'm not mistaken, it's from the same folks that enabled me to put these comments on the screen. So I have nothing bad to say about it. Why not just throw in a nice internet like that? I agree. Kieran Ball says, Stan Lee, Bill Everett, and Jack Kirby created Daredevil, so it wouldn't have been Stan Lee who could have caused trouble for the Turtles, but he didn't. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, it's fair enough. That's a good point. Kieran Ball hitting me with facts. Just as got a hell of a lot more people interested in comics, help TMNT, and help Daredevil comics. True. Very true. I think Daredevil in general just does not get enough credit. And I think that's why the Netflix Daredevil series was both such a surprise in terms of its success, but also way overdue. You know what I mean? In terms of its, we needed that when it came out for sure, and I still love it. And I'm really looking forward to the next iteration that we get, because I think that what little we saw of Daredevil in the She-Hulk series, whether you like that series or not, I thought it was a lot of fun personally. But I think their treatment of Daredevil there was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. I particularly enjoyed the takeoff on the costume, like the original, gold and red, which was cool. I think it was good. I think it was really good, and I'm looking forward to see more of him. But I think they're going to give him a lot more flexibility now with Disney Plus, and I hope we get a feature film out of him at some point, or at least get him in a feature film, because he deserves it. More than just saying, I'm a really good lawyer, which was one of my favorite scenes from that film. But, what can you say? But I also feel like when we're talking about comics and even bands that have like rotating lineups and stuff, different songwriters and whatnot. Oh, Bill's here.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing good, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. Are we live?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
It's working right out the gate.
Yeah. There's an easier way to do this so that your guests can see you, and I'll talk about that offline to you. But
sure.
No, the topic today, is it just Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, or is it in general the someone who is now no longer with us, who has been disparaged by the internet because of their views at the time or something that they did?
Well, the entire subject matter really is just anyone, the subject of legacy and how public perception of either the artist or the art can maybe tarnish that. They don't even need to have been called out per se. Even something as simple as like the relatively, shall we say, it wasn't nearly as damning when there was this whole thing with Stan Lee and Steve Ditko and Spider-Man. And he's like, no, he put it in his documentary. He said, yeah, he co-created with me. Like, absolutely. You know, you bet. And even went so far as to write him a letter and all this stuff, you know, but it wasn't nearly as bad as, say, Bob Kane and Bill Finger.
Oh, no.
And, no, that was egregious. That motherfucker was straight up lying.
Well, here's the thing. You're talking about Bob Kane and his studio, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So Bob Kane had a studio, and Bill Finger and Jerry Robinson and various artists and writers worked in there for him. And they did all the work, and he collected all the money, and he paid them a salary for doing what they did. And so in his mind, he felt like that he was correct in what he in his mind. He felt that way, but he was wrong, because none of these people got any credit for what they did until long years after this was all over with, and people figured out, wait, Bob Kane didn't do any of this. These guys did it for him, but they were. You have to remember that that's the way it worked back then. Can we judge that by today's standards? You were talking about that earlier. Well, we can, but I mean, these guys signed contracts as well. They signed away. Even Siegel and Schuster signed away their rights to character to get the character out there. And were they making good money for the time? Yes. Did they end up in poverty later on? Yes. It's hard to judge that. Now, going back to Stan Lee and Jack Kirby.
Mm-hmm.
Kirby had a love-hate relationship with Stan, I think.
Yeah, they definitely were a very embattled married couple, if you will.
Yeah, and I brought that up earlier. You know, if you haven't read, when Kirby went over to DC Comics and created the Fourth World, one of the books he created was Mr. Miracle. Mm-hmm. And he was so embittered with Stan Lee at that time that he created a parody of Stan Lee in there called Funky Flashman, who tried to be Mr. Miracle's manager. And you have to read the comics to really see, and you have to understand how Stan dressed and looked at the time. Oh, yeah. He basically drew Stan Lee in the comic, but Funky Flashman was all fake. He had a fake beard. He had a fake hair on top of his head. He even had a manservant named House Roy. If you know who Roy Thomas is, that was his. You know, and he would shove him out there and let him get eaten up by the wolves while he ran away. You know, so there was a little bit of animosity there, and Kirby was he became a angry old man in his old age over all of this, I think.
Well, you also have to consider, like, the thing that I try to remember when considering the relationship is that when Stan came on to Marvel back when it was timely, Jack was already there, already doing comics. So you got to figure that, you know, in just a few short years, Stan became the boss, and Jack had to be going like, "What? I've been here for how long?" That had to have crossed his mind at some point.
Well, I'm sure that had a lot to do with it, but yeah, you also have to understand now the way DC Comics were written and drawn is a whole different thing. You know, the so-called Marvel
method.
Marvel method, yes. So, and I've read a lot of what Kirby had said, and I've even seen some rare interviews with him, actual on-camera interviews with him. He would tell you that he scripted everything. He wrote it out. He scripted it out in his head. He didn't write any of the dialogue in there, but the whole story was his. And he would give it to Stan, and Stan would write the word bubbles in there and make the people say what they wanted to say. And a lot of times that would get on Kirby's nerves because that wasn't what Kirby wanted them to say, but Stan was making them say it anyway. Like, for instance, Spider-Man passing by the protesters, you know. So the protesters are down there protesting, and in Kirby's mind, you know, look at those hippie freaks, but instead, you know, Stan Lee would write, "Hey, I'm with you guys. I'm on your side," you know.
Well, Stan was a master of he could read the room a lot better than Kirby or Ditko could. And Ditko, I would say, was the far more extreme. Like, I don't even have to get into that.
Well, Mr. A, I need say no more, right?
Sure. And folks at home, if you don't know about that, just look up Steve Ditko and Mr. A. There's a billion YouTube videos about it, and it's nuts. It's crazy.
Well, if you to put it in a nutshell, if you remember the question, that was a Ditko creation as well. Well, right. take that, and times it by 10 billion, and now you've got Mr.
Right.
A out. I guess
like the worst aspects of the Watchmen times 1,000, easily. Yeah. But there has to be a certain degree of respect that I pay to Mr. Ditko with regard to him just putting out exactly what he wanted to put out. I can't fault him. Like, everyone has their right to self-expression, right? And it's impossible for self-expression to be incorrect. It could be a problematic opinion, and if you're expressing something as fact that's not fact, okay, yeah. But if you're expressing an opinion or a feeling, it's impossible for that to be, quote, wrong. The opinion can be embattled. The thoughts that you could be something to be, I mean, that's different. But like, if you just give of yourself, okay, great, that exists, that is what it is. There's stuff that I've said and done in the name of art that I probably, I wouldn't go so far as to say as I regret it, but I will say that there are times that I go, maybe I shouldn't have.
Well, let's think about this in a different way. Let's take ourselves out of the situation and just look in the box for a minute. Mm-hmm. Is it possible to write about a situation or write a character who believes things that you don't believe? Well, of course, that's easy to do, right? Well, not really, but you can. Okay, so are all comedians who make jokes about tasteless things, do they believe what they're making the comedy about? No, they're making comedy.
And they're making jokes. Yeah,
it's the same thing with writers. If I write a murder mystery novel with a murderous character, does it mean I'm a murderous person? No, it does not. It means I wrote about that. Can I have ultra conservative views and write a liberal character? Well, sure, I can. And vice versa.
I wouldn't be very good at it, but you could.
Right, you can. The thing is, what you have to do is you have to separate that stuff, and that's what's been lost today. And I think, especially on Twitter, X, whatever Elon's calling it these days. Is there's these whole legions of people who live these shallow lives that all they are is outraged all the time, and if they're not outraged, they have to find something to be outraged about. So now they take literary characters or fictional movie characters and they equate them with the creators of it. So now we can't like Harry Potter anymore because of J.K. Rowling going on TV and saying the things that she said. You see what I'm saying?
I definitely do, and I think that this also
you can't do that.
And I think the same goes for personally held beliefs with, for example, politics, right? Like, there's, without going into great detail and not making this political, you look at some of the stuff that's been going on in Florida for the last 5 or 6 years, like banning books and like threatening to destroy books and teachers getting fired for having a certain book in their classroom. Now, whether or not you agree with the teacher, I think the undue influence that government is regulating things in that situation is too much. Like, there's a fine art, there's a fine line. Same thing, creativity, policy, all these things go hand in hand, I think. And there has to be some kind of dispassionate separation that you have to have in order for a functioning society to be exactly that, a functioning society. We got some comments from chat here. Jeff says, separate the art from the creator. I think we agree with that. Sir Clifton says, bitterness towards others only comes from bitterness from within. We live in a society now that is too literal and extremely sensitive. And I would say that's true on all sides of the spectrum, I would say. And I think it's a very good point and probably really the core point of what I'm trying to get at. Like, you guys know by now, I've been doing this for a couple of years now. And no matter what I say the subject of the stream is, I always have something underneath that I want to talk about that I'm trying to do, much like a comic story or a song. So, I know some people, I occasionally, when I put up a title, sometimes I'll get a message from somebody saying, oh, you're going to talk about this? And I never answer them. I just go, maybe, maybe not. You know, because I you got to come to the show. You got to come to the show to find out. You know, that's what it is, right? But I definitely feel that all art is a reflection of the times that they are in. And we can equate that to creators, artists, musicians, poets, comedians especially, and even the people that purvey that art, like a John Wayne and so forth. Like, I condone nothing that he said in that article. I think that he was just, even for that time, was a bit too bigoted for his own good, but that was who the man was, like it or not. But I can still watch a John Wayne film and love that film
because
just
he wasn't
know that guy's a dick.
Believe it or not, everybody tends to do this. They tend to think that the actor is playing themselves on screen, and yeah, there's Nick Cages who seem to be doing that, and there are Burt Reynolds who seems to be doing that, but they're really not. The character in that movie is not that person. That character in that movie doesn't have any political beliefs because it's a fictional character. If you can watch that movie and forget about this person who may or may not be the greatest person on earth, or a piece of crap that's probably going to go to the hot place when they die, then it doesn't matter. But then you have Kevin Spacey, who now we got to delete his TV series off of Netflix because people can't even look at him without thinking about him being a piece of crap. I can watch his movies and I don't care.
Yeah, to a certain degree, I agree with that. Just in the sense of, like, my point with that is that I know I can separate that stuff to a certain degree. I'm still going to have some of those uncomfortable thoughts, of course. But at the same time, it's like, well, the movie exists, and if I want to watch that movie or that TV show, I have to be willing to do that. Now, you get into
with The Flash. Okay, we have Ezra Miller who did terrible things. We have people who can't look at Ezra Miller's face without thinking about the terrible things he did. So the movie wasn't that great a movie in the first place. But I think it would have done a ton better if Ezra Miller had been a decent human being and hadn't done the things that he did to spoil that for people. Did I go see it? Yes. Did I enjoy it? I critiqued it for its failings, but not because of Ezra Miller as a person. Does that make sense?
It does, and I had moments where I was like, ugh, but I enjoyed the film for what it was rather than what it should have been. Also, that film was filmed prior to a lot of that stuff coming out too.
Well,
now,
it was always in the can. They were going to lose big money if they didn't at least put it out there, even though it lost
get
money
something
anyway.
back, right? But then Jason Garcia brings up an interesting point, which is almost the opposite, where Jeffrey Jones, who, as we may or may not know as an actor, he was in Ferris Bueller, he was in Beetlejuice as well. Got brought up on some very serious charges with regard to, so we say sex offense. I'm not going to go any further because YouTube's weird about that. But they killed off his character for the new Beetlejuice film. Well, I think in those situations, you're obliged to not hire that actor. Like, once you know they're a piece of crap, like, you know what? Maybe not. Now,
let's look at something else. Now, I hate to cut you off, but we got that guy that played Hyde on that 70s show, right? He's in prison, I think.
Oh, yeah, he is.
Yeah, so can you watch the 70s show? Yeah, you can watch the 70s show, and it doesn't matter. But if you're going to make a new 2000 show, I think they've done something like that, where they revisit that whole family of the Foremans.
Right.
We don't even mention Hyde on there. That's fine.
Yeah, I totally get that. So it's that fine line. It's a juggling act, really. But I think that when we're talking about actors, it's a bit easier to mitigate. When we talk about a writer and a piece of art or a piece of literature or music in particular, where oftentimes, and I guess some people would lump comedians in there, but I don't, because they're jokes. But with music, it's not always metaphor. With, writing a piece of literature, a script or whatever, it's not always a metaphor either. And so that separation can become much more muddy. Although it's if you look at Cannibal Corpse lyrics, it's very clear. They don't want anyone going out doing any of the things in those songs. They don't want someone taking a hammer and smashing someone's face in. Of course not. No one wants that. And if you think they want that, you're dumb. But then you look at something like, and I'll bring up Acheron again, like there's an album that talks about genocide of entire religions, carte blanche, because they just want religion to be gone. And it's like, how can you not take that idea seriously? Because they're really militant about it on that album. If you talk to those guys, maybe they're not really, each person is individually like, they're not organizing that or trying to make that happen, but in a fantasy world that they're writing their lyrics in, they would love to see that happen. Like they wouldn't lose a wink of sleep. And it's, again, I'm not trying to talk trash about those guys. I know those guys, but it's an interesting question.
Well, that brings me to ask a question, because there are some, I guess, death metal bands over there in Europe who
literally burn churches. Yeah.
Black metal, that kind of crap. So let's look at that. Can I, as a listener of music, which I don't listen to that music, by the way, I can't.
No.
I like metal music, but not that particular brand. But could I listen to that music and not think about the atrocious things that they did? I probably could, but I haven't had the ability to compartmentalize and not to be, male chauvinist. I think it's a male thing. We're logical and we're able to do that. But some people can't compartmentalize that. I mean, I can't listen to that music no matter how much I enjoy the way it sounds, because of the atrocious things that they did. And I get that. But does that mean that music has to be destroyed and taken away from history and suppressed? No, it does not. All of these things have been done, and you can't do anything to undo the fact that it has been done. Even if you take the history book and you rip those pages out of those history books, that shit did happen.
Right.
And no matter how much you want to pretend like it didn't, or make society believe that it didn't happen, it did. And it needs to stay in that book. It needs to stay available to anybody that wants to look at it.
You can't erase history because you're going to repeat it if you don't have something to read. Now, I'm going to read a bunch of comments from chat, and I think they all fall under the points we just made. So just let me go on all of them. So just Jeff says there's levels of toleration when it comes to actors and actions, assault, offense, and all that. It's a no-go for me. Don't hire these people that have done horrible things. Sir Clifton follows up and says, what about Chris Benoit? Can you go and appreciate and watch his body of work and talent in the ring, or do you agree he should be erased and banned? And then Jeff says, you can say what you want, because words are bullshit, but if you're out there matching with the Klan and wearing an armband, I'm not going to be a fan. Manic Plastic says, I personally do not care on what's happened in their personal life or what they've done. I'm just here to watch a movie. Mm-hmm. Jason Garcia, speaking directly to your black metal point, goes, Burzum! That band is 100% just, first of all, I hate the music. I never liked it. Never. I think they only got popular because of what the guy did, because he was the guy who was burning churches and killed a guy. And went to prison, the whole thing, and he's still a piece of shit. Like, fuck that guy. Vars Vikernes, if you're watching this, fuck you. Go sit on a fucking carpet nail. Manic Plastic Toy Shop says the thing with Chris Benoit is no, he should not be erased or banned. It's just stupid. If you do your research right, a lot of the evidence doesn't match up. Okay, that's a different thing. And Jason Garcia says, I don't know. Some celebrities can buy their way back given time. And I think that depending upon how bad the offense is or what was done, yeah, some people can be forgiven and brought back. When you compare what Kevin Spacey did to what, say, Louis C.K. did, I think there's a big difference. And there's some things you can apologize for and some things you can never apologize for. But I think what all of this boils down to is, as we wrap this conversation up, and I think that Bill would agree with me on this above all else, these are personal choices we have to make. I don't think it's for culture or society or a social media platform to say what is universally bad or good. I think that when it comes to expression and art in particular, especially, that we all have to kind of read all the facts that we know are indisputable and make our own decision on how we want to consume these things. But above all else, I feel that if you make those personal choices, that you cannot erase the art from history because history exists whether or not you want to acknowledge its existence.
Mm-hmm. I do agree with that. Thank you, Jim. You said all I needed to say on that.
Well, I saw where you were going, and I was like, well, let's kind of bring this full circle here. So I want to thank you, Bill, for being on the panel today. I'm sure we'll have you again, and I'm gonna wrap this puppy up. All right, and I'll get with you after the show.
Sure, I'll be right here. I'll be right back in a second. But good night, everyone. Thank you for being here with Grindhead Jim, and we'll all see you next time. Good journey.
Cheers, buddy.
Bill Wifte, ladies and gentlemen, absolute legend. I love having him on the show, and he had some really good things to say, no question about it. And I really appreciate his participation. And I love that you guys had what you had to say about everything, in the sense that, like, you're definitely in on that conversation. You all have different opinions, you know, and I'm not going to bring up these comments about Mr. Kevin Spacey, but yeah, definitely some crazy stuff. So I really feel like we have to hold ourselves personally responsible when we're in these situations to choose to take on these issues, these pieces of art, and I do think it bleeds into politics too. And again, I'm not gonna tell you what to think about that stuff, but I do want you to use this conversation that we had today, guys, when you are considering those political things, whatever they may be. Because no matter where you fall on the political spectrum, no matter where, there's people that need to be pointed at and called out for their bullshit. And so my parting final point is this: where you find bullshit, call it out, stamp it out, but don't tell other people what they should be doing with their personal choices. And that's that. So folks, I love you all. It was a great show. But until we see you next time, may all your card backs be straight, may all your grinds be merry, may you be able to find anything you're looking for at any given time at a price you feel is reasonable. Take care, folks. We'll see you on the next TGL. Cheers.